What's up, my friends? So you want to be a loan officer, you say? Want to get in the real estate business, yeah? It might be a good idea. Might be a great idea. One thing I can tell you for certain is I feel this headline in my bones. Not just because I was actually doing loans 22 years ago. And, at that time, just to give you some reference on this, at that time, people didn't even know you could refinance. I mean, literally from 2000 to like 2005, we would cold call people in the phone book and explain to them what refinancing even was. They didn't know. They're like, I already have a loan with the bank. I'm like, I know, we can pay that one off, give you a new one, lower payment. They're like, I don't know. Sounds fishy. Those were the calls we're having. So I remember 22 years ago, and if demand, and when we say demand, we're talking about applications. Applications are down a lot. Refinance applications are down. Purchase applications are down. Finance applications almost non-existent. Purchase applications just down a lot. Back then, that was when people didn't even know about refinancing. So if that gives you an idea of how much of a rug pull there's been so far, it really does tell you a tale. There's a lot to be said for this. I mean, it is what it is. Now, you're going to see there's certain things that are opinion. Now, this is fact-based headline, so I'm down with this. Even though we don't like it, I'm down with it. Mortgage demand drops to 22-year low. Higher interest rates and inflation crush home buyers. That's true. I mean, higher interest rates and inflation are definitely playing a role here because inflation and higher interest rates are directly correlated. Crushing home buyers, I don't know about that. I don't know about crush home buyers. I'm just seeing home buyers win. I mean, what I'm seeing is home buyers getting whatever they ask for pretty much. You ask for crust repairs, granted. Appraisal comes in low, we're dropping it. Okay. Done. That's more like what's going on. So there's a couple things in here. So mortgage demand fell last week, hitting the lowest point since 2000, according to the MBA. Buyers have lost considerable purchasing powers. Rates have almost doubled since early in the year. It's also true. And those are things that are weighing on the market. And this is not a surprise. This is the stuff that we knew was going to be here. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about gas prices today. We're going to talk about earnings and stocks, talk about renting a home, burring. We're going to talk about burring today. We're going to look at rents. Oh, this is such a good map. This is such a good link. This is like the best link that I share probably on this page. That's how great this link is to give you an idea of what rents are doing across the nation. It's a good barometer. We're going to look at mortgage rates too, mortgage bonds. Holding strong in a tight pattern. Looks like it's coiling up. It really does, but you never know. Markets can always go both directions. I've had a lot of people the last few days. I don't even say the last few weeks, not attacking me, but strong in their opinions that things are really bad, things are going to get worse. And I agree, things aren't great. I'm not sitting here saying, oh, values are going to go up another 10%, but I've never said that. I said values are likely to come down 5 to 10%, but I've also said that it's healthy. I've also said that, if you look at what it takes to move the real estate market, it doesn't just move on whims, the whole market. People can move on whims when they sell or buy a house. But the overall market doesn't just move on whims. It's not how it works. It's too big. You need really, really big things to move it. And so, and we've seen that. Interest rates have gone up a lot. Okay. There's recession on the doorstep. We're technically in one, but they'll tell you later. Don't worry. Don't worry. Everything's just fine until we tell you what's going on. So there's that happening. And then, what are we expecting? We have to manage our expectations. Remember, just because things aren't great for real estate values to go up between now and the end of the year doesn't mean it has to crash. There's a lot of in between. There's a lot of sideways. And that is where I believe we are. And it makes sense that that's where we would be given the circumstances. So we're going to look at all these things today. So mortgage demand drops to the 22-year low. Higher rates. It's not crushing homebuyers, though. It's creating great opportunities for homebuyers. It's crushing sellers. I should put, mortgage demand drops, crushing sellers. That would be accurate. That would make sense. June home sales fall 5.4% from May as prices set yet another record. And that was the thing I think was interesting to take. And we're talking about June. What's good about June as a barometer here is that we had peak inflation, what appears to be peak inflation in June. And I'll show you why here in a second. And it's not just about gas prices, but that is definitely a big component. And it's probably the component that people see and notice and pay attention to the most. So June home sales fell. So the number of homes sold fell, but prices still set another record. So the other point I wanted to make is that just because demand slows down doesn't necessarily mean that prices will go down that much. They probably are. I mean, I'm expecting them to, but it doesn't mean that they have to crash. Even if demand crashes, it doesn't mean that prices have to crash, because remember, sellers have to accept the offers. We've seen a lot of sellers come off the market. I was talking to you about that, I think, last week. I had a meeting with a gentleman who's cold calling expired listings and was shocked how short some of those listings were. Some buyers are just kicking tires. They're just seeing what the market has to offer. Will someone pay this much for my house? If they will, I'll move. No, I'll stick it out. What I posted this morning on Facebook was all about, hey, something that people don't realize is the rental market is a huge buoy for real estate values. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So prices set another record. So you only need one buyer per house. Now, if buyers start to realize they're the only buyer, then things can change, right? If a buyer knows they're the only buyer and you didn't have any other offers, what a position to be in as the buyer, right? What a position buyers have been dreaming of. But you only need one per house that's for sale in order to sell it at market rate, whatever that might be. So just keep that in mind. We don't have to have 20 offers to get a good price for your home. This one was interesting. Gasoline prices may have peaked for the summer, could be headed for below $4 a gallon. And the reason why they're saying this, and goes back to the same reason why I like to trade oil, because it's feast or famine. It self-regulates. When oil prices go up, aka gas prices go up, people use it less. And so then the demand drops, and then the price has to drop as a result. And then it gets cheap again, then people use it again. And so there's this cycle that goes on and on. And so as prices spiked, you see demand dropping, and a lot of it looks like we've peaked. So if you just look at Gas Buddy or Yahoo charts here, you can see average gas price peaked at about $5.10 or $5.11 about a month ago. And it's just been kind of steadily heading down since then. And that is something that's a trend that could continue. Who knows? Anything can happen, right? And if I mention financial markets, anything can always happen. But the trend here should be lower because we're not going to expect a big pickup in demand. Gas is still expensive. So it's not like big plans are going to be made to use tons and tons of gas, sending the price higher. So the expectations are that we should see gas come in. This is a important component to a lot of these inflation metrics. A lot of the things that we're seeing, a lot of the components of the inflation metrics are going to be lower for this month than they were last month. So we could have seen peak inflation too. Of course, we won't know until we get there, but there's a couple pro articles in here. The earnings apocalypse may turn out to be greatly exaggerated. I thought, that I agree with that. We should look at the earnings that are coming out, who's presenting, what's happening. Is everything perfect? Is everything amazing? Not necessarily, but are things terrible? Is it a meltdown? No, none of that yet. This one was interesting. What recession? Everscore ISI, which is a research firm, you can look up if you want to, says that after bank earnings, they show consumers are paying their debts. So, I made a joke, I think, on my last video. I said, hey, people aren't even fire selling boats yet. Why are we talking about people fire selling houses? Like, there's order of operations. The first thing you don't sell your house first thing first. That's the last thing you do. So if we're going to see like a real capitulation amongst consumers, it starts with other things first. Like if you were really, imagine if you were just wiped out today, like what's the first thing you do? You would probably go like, okay, what can I sell? Like, do I have like some crypto in some account I haven't looked at in a while? Okay. Do I have like baseball cards in the basement, or do we have an extra car? Do we have a boat? You look at all these other things. Like your house is like the last thing that you look at usually. You don't want to fire sell your house. Nobody wants to do that. So, we need to see a lot of other things, a lot of other dominoes first before we can say, okay, people are probably going to fire sell their house next. Should you rent or buy a house? Use the Burrow rule to avoid financial regret, says Real Estate Investor. This is actually pretty interesting. I've never heard this before. Buy utility, rent luxury. It's interesting though. It makes sense. So if you want to live in a luxury home and you rent it, you can usually get a better deal that way than buying in a lot of cases. Buy utility. So I'm a big believer in this. Buying the cheapest detached home in an area. The entry level detached home in any area is going to be something that has demand, long-term demand as well. But what I am seeing a lot of people do is burring, which is, you buy, renovate, refinance, rent, repeat. A lot of people doing that. Really good market for it because you have sellers who have their ears open. You have sellers that are begging for offers. And these sellers who are begging for these offers, they're open. They're open to negotiate. And so if you're a buyer, that's a great situation. Now, it doesn't mean you can get it for whatever price you want, but it means at least you might find their bottom dollar. You might see what is the least amount they'd be willing to let it go for. And that's a great position to be in if you're an investor, especially if you're a burr. That's a perfect position to be in. So if you burr properties or you want to buy and hold long term, terrific market to do that. And here's one of the reasons why. Let's take a look at rent. Now, the point of my post, I guess it was late last night that I actually wrote the post, but I was just discussing how the rental market really is a huge player in residential resale market. And you can go to my Facebook page, my personal page or profile, I guess. That's where I posted it if you want some of the details of what I'm discussing. But basically, a long story short, in 2008, like leading up to the crash, you could get rentals for so cheap. I remember seeing a house for rent for $1,800, a brand new one too, in a Scala. And I'll never forget this example because I almost bought the house across the street, same floor plan, brand new, unlived in, for 700, I think 710 or something like that. I said, you know what? This doesn't make sense to me. If I wanted to live in this house, I would just rent that one for 1,500. I did all the math and I was like, it just doesn't make sense. I was putting the pieces together. I had never seen anything like this. No one had. I was putting the pieces together. So I passed. I didn't buy the house in Scala, thank goodness. Right. And now, of course, because I don't think I would have been able to hold through all that, so much turmoil between there. And then I got divorced and all kinds of things. So I probably would have lost it. But it made the point to me very clear. Like, it doesn't make as much sense to own in this situation if rentals are really that cheap. And I started looking into it, and there was tons of super cheap rentals, houses for rent under $2,000 a month in San Diego in great locations. It sounds crazy. And if we had a time machine, we could go back on realtor.com and look those things up. You'd see it. But the rental market was really, really prime for renters at that time. It was great for renters. Renters had lots of options because everyone was an investor. Everyone who wanted to buy a house could buy one because the lending standards were a joke. So if you had a heartbeat, you could get a loan. So you could buy an investment property, rent it out with your NAGAM loan. And I'm sitting here paying your NAGAM payment or less. I know a lot of people had renters, negative amortization payments, and they were still upside down on their rentals, cash flow wise. But they were banking on that equity, just banking on that equity coming in one day.
All we want to do is pump you up.
There's a hoping for it. And that was what the game was. Now it's very, very different. But that is what fueled a lot of people into being able to dump their houses very easily. They would dump their houses because they had an option. The other option was rent the house across the street, rent the house down the street. It's cheap. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Today, you don't have that option. So, what is plan B for all these people who are going to sell their homes and crash the market? Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Do you think they will en masse go and try to rent in the craziest rental market in the history of our country? That they're going to en masse run to that's going to be better for them somehow? If they're in financial, hardship, that's not going to be the smarter way to go. You say, well, they don't have any option. They need to sell and take their equity out so they can then use that equity to go rent a place. Okay. I mean, that's a reasonable thought. But if you look at these rents, so let's get to this. California, state of California. So these are statewide. It shows you the trajectory, 2020 to 2021. This data just came out. It's complete. The rent.com people send me this stuff. 20% year over year in California, almost 40% year over year in Oregon. This is rents, so average rents. Washington, average rent up 35%. Look at this. Nevada's down. What's up with that? That's interesting, isn't it? Utah up 71%. Average rent in Utah up 71%. If you look at some of these, Texas 30%. What's Florida? Almost 30%. A lot of 35%. Just a few places are negative. Idaho is negative. Nevada's negative. Mississippi's negative. And we don't even have data on Montana. Some places like South Dakota is at 53%. That's wild. Look at Illinois up 70%. So a lot of these places, rents are just up insane amounts. Crazy, especially in California. That's the average rents up 20% California, but I'll tell you, detached home, if you want a detached home to rent, it's going to be a lot worse than that. If you really take a look at it, it's going to be a lot worse than that. By the way, we're live right now. We're live on like all these different platforms: Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, etc. Drop a comment, ask a question, just say hi if you want to. Give us some love here. I'll get to those in just a second. So these rents being just insane, it buoys the market because your plan B, if you get to the point where you're like, okay, we should sell the house, you have to then go, all right, where are we going to move to? Are we going to move back with mom and dad? Are we going to move in with friends? Are we going to go rent? Are we going to live RV life? Like, what are we going to do? What are people going to do in mass? See, at that time, back when the crash happened, there was a massive amount of rentals. Ton of them. And in a lot of cases, the owners were people who were being foreclosed on, and they were already not paying the bank the payments, but they were collecting rent. The banks had to honor the lease agreements that they gave to the tenants. And so you had situations like that happening where people would even take less rent, crazy low rents, because they weren't even making a mortgage payment. So it was all profit. And then a lot of the tenants found this out. And they were like, okay, well, if you're not paying the bank because they got something in the mail saying, hey, you're delinquent or whatever, like if you're not paying the bank, we're not paying you, screw you. And then people were living rent free. It was crazy. It was crazy. So we're a very, very, very long ways away from that. We're a very long ways away from that. Let's do this. Let's check this here. We'll look at mortgage rates. Here's one. Father of the girl. For those that bought in early 2020 in San Diego and want to upgrade house in SD, when does it make sense to sell and buy your dream house over remodeling your current home to make your dream house? That's a great question. I think that the reality behind that is very specific to you. If you can make your house your dream home, I think that's always a great way to go. But here's the thing: if you want to sell and buy, or as you would say, upgrade, so you're going to sell, buy, ideally, you buy up in a down market and you downsize in an up market. So right now you would call this a down market for us, right? So if you're upgrading, it's a great time to do it. If you're selling and buying in the same market, you're always going to take it one way or the other, right? Like if the market's really strong, you're going to do great on your sale, but you're going to struggle on your buy. And if the market's weak, you're going to struggle on your sale, but you're going to do great on your buy. So as long as you're doing it in the same market, it's relatively a wash, or it should be. But when you upgrade, a lot of times in a down market, that can be beneficial for you because a lot of times the higher priced homes in a down market will have more discounts, more write downs, more opportunities to negotiate, less smaller buyer pools, sometimes no buyers at all. And so that's something to consider. But it's a great question, terrific question, and man, I tell you, it got me pondering a number of things for me personally. Remodeling your current home and remodeling, remodel costs and that process is also cumbersome for a lot of people. Like, hey, if we want to redo the whole house or this whole area, it can be very expensive. It can take a lot of time. You could have to live for 3 or 4 months with just crap in your house. If you have kids, that may not work. Hey, we got nails everywhere and all these different things, so it may not even be possible for some people. But that's a great question. Terrific. And if let me do this here real quick while I set this up over here. If you guys have questions for me, you want to get a free loan quote, I'm just smoking everybody left and right. It's been a while since someone's beat me. Been a while. And when it wasn't by much. Maybe help me save some money. Shoot me a text, give me a call, give me an email, get a free loan quote, and get it quick. We move fast. All right, let's take a look at interest rates here, and then we'll call it a day. So we lost 16 basis points today. Not ideal. Not ideal. Lost 16 bips. But the good news is the overall formation is still in great shape. We still have this very rounded bottom area here. We're still holding at support. It still looks like it's coiling up to go higher. And we feel pretty confident Federal Reserve is going to raise rates here in a week. And that should help mortgage rates go down. Remember, those two things are not correlated, except for in this situation where we have massive inflation. Inflation is really troublesome for bonds. And so when the Federal Reserve is raising rates, that is deflationary and therefore positive for bonds. And that's why we should expect mortgage-backed securities to go higher, to have a good day if rates go up as we expect them to. So a very interesting day in the markets today. I wanted to look at this real quick because gold under 1,700. So a lot of people have been telling me all these crazy things are going to happen. It reminds me of the China. You remember the Evergrande thing where they were telling everybody that it was the first domino that was going to crush the world economy? And I don't know. I didn't hear anything about it. A lot of things that happen in China are very isolated to China because China is not super interconnected with other countries other than as just a manufacturer. And they don't want to give that business up. They wouldn't, want to hurt that business. If they did, for some reason, it can be fine. We manufacture stuff here, as we probably should anyway. But the reality is that you're going to hear a lot of things out there right now. You're going to hear a lot of things about, this is going bad and that is going bad and this is going bad and that is going bad. Just look at all of it. Look at every single piece of information as objectively as you can. Say, okay, let me take a look at this piece of information here. Is this something that's really bad? Is this something that I should be worried about? Is this something I need to take action on? Most likely it's not, but approach it that way because you're going to see that a lot of people really want a crash to happen here for different reasons, but a lot of people just innately, they just kind of want it in their soul. They want to see prices come down. Sometimes it's because people just want to see homes be more affordable. Sometimes it's because people want to be right. And they've been telling people there's a crash coming, or sometimes because people watched a YouTuber talk about how all these things are going wrong, but they didn't quite know how to fact check it. And inside of that YouTuber's video, there was like 12 huge assumptions that were made. I've watched how people make these assumptions and they attach it to their opinion very, very easily. So someone will say something like, well, if there's way less jobs, or if the job market gets nailed, then this. Whoa. That's a huge if. That's a huge if. Job market's very strong. Very, very strong. And people question that too. Well, these numbers aren't probably right. Oh, okay. All I know is I work with people who are getting approved for home loans. That's what I do. And there's a lot of people who have in recent times gotten a new job somewhere where they're making more money. I know this because I get their offer letters. I see their W-2s. I know what they were making. I know what they are making. You don't see people going the other direction. I don't know anyone, not that it's not happening, but I don't know anyone who's gotten laid off. It certainly hasn't happened in mass. It's happening here and there as companies need to make adjustments or doing it. That makes sense. So I don't see this gigantic, you know, wave of bad stuff that's coming. I feel like we've already gotten the majority of these bad items are already here. They're already on the table. And if that's true, then we could be putting in a bottom. It's very, very possible that could be the case. Maybe there's more bad news to come. Maybe there's stuff that we haven't seen. Maybe there's a black swan hiding out there for us that's going to slap us in the face. All those things are possible. But let's not make assumptions, particularly ones about things that are super macro, and then form our opinion based off of an assumption. Let's look at what's going on, what's happening, what are we seeing, what real data do we have to look at, and if you have some experience in the market, that's great too. I remember specifically what it was like in 2008. I mean, you want to talk about the world ending? Man, the fear mongers were going crazy. They had the right to do so. I mean, it was insane. Banks were shutting down. I mean, Lehman Brothers shut down. People even remember that name. That was a household name. Washington Mutual was a household name. They went kaput. So, I mean, we had crazy things going on. And that's a part of the crash in real estate caused all that. So, man, just to look at the difference between now and then, it's so stark. We're so far away from that. But it doesn't mean that it can't happen. Doesn't mean that things couldn't get worse and tumble out of control. It's always possible. But why would we want to make an opinion or live our life thinking about all the worst case scenarios that might possibly maybe happen? Let's just look at what's here and go from there. All right, guys. You know how to reach me if you need me. Here to give you free loan quotes, no lender fees, wholesale mortgage rates. We work 7 days a week over here. Email, call, text. Happy to help any way I can. You guys have a great night. Take care.